Good afternoon, it is 4:25 p.m. We've got about half an hour of sunset and I've set up, come back down to this jetty. I've done a sunrise shoot here, but come down here for this sunset shoot. And what I'm hoping to achieve today is, because there's not a lot of cloud in the sky, really going to play on the fact that we want that nice light coming off the sunset onto the boat here in this jetty, and hopefully a little bit of colour on the clouds that are over on the right hand side there on the horizon, and hopefully going to get a good shot, but you never know. So we're here to have a go, but it's much better than it was when I was here for sunrise. Very tidal here, so now with the tide up, what it's done is forced the ropes on the boat to be tight, which has pulled the boat out from the jetty, and I think we'll get a really nice shot. So just putting some filters on now so I can get my shot sorted, my exposure correct, and I'm just thinking about putting a hard grade on, simply because that horizon there is pretty solid. I might try hard grade, I might try soft grade, we'll see what happens, but that's the next step. Is I'm just going to start putting some filters in and see what is going to work best. All right, so I'm going to do a couple of pre-sunset shots whilst that light's really nice on that boat. I've put in my 9.9 stop soft grade just into the front of the filter, just to settle down the sky a little bit. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick a circular polarizing filter on, only because there's a lot of reflections and things, and this here is should get rid of those reflections, but I've got to try and put it in the right way around. So this is the challenge with this particular filter, is that so I'll take this one out and then we'll just spin that around until we get it right, and then we should be able to put the other one in. Hopefully the angles will work out for us. So with this one, you spin it around till you get the look you're after. I think there's nice. So I get a nice blue sky when I put it that way, which is good, and I'm lucky because it's worked out being orientated the right way. Then I'll put this soft grade back in. I'll do that, that'll get the sky to settle down a little bit. And we'll just take a few shots and see what happens. Right now, if you look at my settings, f7.1, I'll bring that up to f9. Like that a little bit more. You can see ISO 64, f9, 1/8 of a second, 1/10 of a second. It's going to be changing as the light changes. And I'm also got my exposure comp 2/3 of a stop wound down, just because it's going to overexpose otherwise. So I'll just get rid of the information there. You can sort of see the composition. And I've done a couple of wider ones as well with the beach. I don't like the beach because all these footsteps actually make it really quite messy. It's a really nice light, and hopefully as that sun goes down, which it's about to dip down below the mountain, the light will change dramatically. And then the real fun will start as we try and keep up with things. But at this stage, it's just a waiting game. My leading line here is this jetty going out, the wharf. And so that sort of draws the eye into the image. And then in the top third of the frame, so if you think about the rule of thirds, the top third of the frame, if there was a line across that third, is where I've stuck the boat and the intersection where the 2/3 meet. And really that's what I've done here. Now that light has dipped down behind that mountain, and it's not looking as fabulous here now, but it probably in post-production will bring it up and you'll get those really nice smooth sort of pastel colours coming out. Well, 11 minutes off of sunset, and the sun has dipped down behind the mountains, and we're just waiting on some colour to happen. At this stage, it's all a little bit bland for me, but that's okay. It's just a matter of hanging out and waiting to see what happens. The colour is actually reflecting on the water over there, so I might have to change compositions just to capture that. Who knows? We'll see what happens in the next few minutes. And what I'm hoping for is that the colour really starts to project across to the clouds over here that you can see behind me. And that'll make for an amazing photo. I haven't really changed any of my settings, just waiting for the colour. That's pretty much it.
The pose of contemplation. Is my sky any good?
All right, we're about 5 minutes away from sunset, and there's a really nice soft sort of salmony colour happening now on the horizon and up in the clouds up there. I've got the circular polarising filter on, just to help reduce the reflections but also bring the colours out. I've also got a 0.9 soft grad on there just to take the harshness out of the sky, and everything's looking really nice. Because I've got a boat that's slightly moving around, I've got to stop and make sure I don't run the risk rather of blurring that out, so I've got to make sure I keep my shutter speed up. So I've dropped my aperture to 6.3 for now at ISO 64. I'll probably increase my ISO up now before I won't reduce my aperture anymore, otherwise I'll get that shallow depth of field happening. And I need to maintain a fairly quick shutter speed. So even 1/6 of a second is probably a bit slow for a really sharp image, depending on what's going on. But right now the boat is rocking around just that little bit, so I need to be careful. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to pump the ISO up. I'm going to bring it up to ISO 400. It gives me 1/40th of a second, just to get some nice, quick, sharp exposures of that boat. And that way, you know, I'll do an 800th of a second, sorry, a 1/60th of a second at ISO 800 as well. And that just makes sure that I've got a couple of images with the boat nice and sharp, and I'm not going to run the risk of having a blurry boat. But pretty exciting, just 3 minutes to go now to sunset. And hopefully that colour really pops off. It's starting to really pop, which is good. Well, sunset was 3 minutes ago, and it looks like all the colour's just about gone. But sometimes it's after the sunset where the best colour comes out. So I'm just hanging out just that little bit longer to see what happens. Got to be the most photographed boat on this entire lake here. When I googled Marimbula photography, the first, I don't know, 10 images that come up is this boat. So it's a very popular photography spot. But we're just not getting the colour. I've seen some really nice colour in those photos. We're just not getting the colour. So as the light's dropping now, f6.3, 1/30th of a second with ISO 800. I've put the exposure comp back to 0 because I didn't need it anymore. And I've still got the circular polarizing filter. What I have changed is I've gone from a 0.9 soft grad to a 0.6, just once again to settle down that sky. But the 0.9 was starting to look a bit dark and vignetting at the top of the image, so I've got rid of that. But as the light drops, I can see it's just stopped to 1/30th of a second now. It's going to keep dropping down now as the light goes. So I've got to make a decision. Do I keep increasing the ISO to keep the boat sharp, or call it quits and just choose a different composition that doesn't include the boat? I could drop the aperture down a bit more. Once again, you run the risk of having the background not in focus, but I'm going to try that. I'm going to get f2.8. It's come up to 1/25th of a second, so nice and fast. We'll grab that shot and see how that goes. Because it's such a long lake, having the background out of focus is not going to matter. There's still some really nice colour, nice hue of colour on the horizon, so even though the sun's gone down, there's some nice colour there. We'll see what happens over the next couple of minutes, and then we'll make a decision whether we stay or not. The boss wants to go and watch some netball, so. Well, clutching at straws now because that colour's definitely disappearing. I've moved my composition, this time to get the jetty as a definite leading line in with the boat. And the reason I've done this is some vain attempt to try and point the camera more that way to see if I can still take advantage of that last little bit of colour. f2.8, so breaking all the rules there with a shallow depth of field. This lens is pretty amazing with the aperture wide open. I've focused on the boat, so at least I can make sure the boat is sharp. And at ISO 800, I'm getting 1/80th of a second, so that's still quick enough to make sure that boat's sharp. And these are the sort of compromises you've got to make in these circumstances because, you know, I need that quicker shutter speed, so I haven't got a lot of choice. And I'll try f3.5, that gives me 1/40th of a second. Just try a few different things. It's not going to hurt. Still got my 0.6 graduated filter in there, soft grad, and the circular polarizing filter. The CPL is just actually helping make the colours pop a bit. So, you know, if you don't know how to use the CPL, you just put it on the front of your lens and rotate it around. Check out the image. You'll soon see when the reflections dip and the colours pop that you've got it around the right way. But it doesn't typically work well into the sun. You've got to have the sun from the side like it is in this situation today. And because the sun's gone down now, the CPL's just taking the reflections out of the water to some degree and giving us a nicer sort of an image. I'm just going to stick this back in there, soft grad, just to get rid of that harsh light off the top. A lot of people ask why don't I do it later in post-production. Well, sometimes I do, but seriously, if you can use filters, it just evens out the exposure, and when you get into post-production it maintains, I think, some of its integrity. I don't know how or why, but I've found when I'm processing images, if I've used filters and I don't have to pull shadows out and reduce highlights to the max, that I get a better quality image. So people will tell you don't need filters anymore. You know, and I can tell you I've used both. I've done both, with filters, without filters. So, you know, up to you, but I really like using filters. It gives me a much better sense of what I'm capturing as well. Well, it's now 10 minutes past sunset, and I really don't think I'm going to get any more colour. So I think I'll call it quits here. I think we've pretty much got the best image I'm going to get tonight. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. Make sure you find me on Instagram or Facebook and come and hang out with me there. And I'll see you on the next one.